Hello there, you are listening to The Screen Queen, where you'll be finding your favorite movie or your favorite television show and learning something new. You'll just have to listen to find out. Here is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there and welcome back to the show Screen Team. As always, and for almost 3 years, my name is Samantha Parrish and you are listening to The Screen Queen. So, I have missed this show, but it was a very necessary break for me. Like, near the end of 2024, man, I was just running on fumes. Like, just get me to the finish line. Just get me through this. I'm going to Squid Game myself however I can to get myself out of that year. Oh, man. I know 2024 was a mixed bag for a lot of people, being good and bad, but I was just ready for it to be over, man. Going into 2025, it does feel fresh, and I've been taking the time to work on my projects and get some necessary stuff done, taking things one brick at a time instead of having to look at this as building Rome in a day, and taking the time for ourselves is something, incredibly important, and we have to do whatever it can be that helps us with our needs. Even if it's Ryan Gosling buying a sex doll for help, that works too. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. That seems like a perfect segue. So Lars and the Real Girl is a film that I first heard about kind of sporadically online. Like, it was just sort of existing. And then I took a cinema class in high school, and there was a girl that had mentioned that Lars and the Real Girl was one of her, fun movies. And my teacher was like, whoa, you've heard of Lars and the Real Girl? Like, out of all the movies mentioned, he was like, yo, you know a gem. And that had me paying attention, too. Like, I need to check out this movie as well. And then over the years, Lars and the Real Girl kept popping up on, movie lists, underrated films or films that depict mental illness, starting to gain a little bit of a classic reputation there. And when I finally gave this movie a shot, I never thought in a million years I'd say a sex doll almost made me cry. The Disney show Gravity Falls even went as far to make a reference to this movie by making an episode called Seuss and the Real Girl. And before I even watched the movie, I was like, oh yeah, that's Lars and the Real Girl. For a movie I hadn't even seen yet, I already knew what it was, and even knowing of the episode, I'm like, not bad, Disney, not bad. I have missed the show for many weeks, and I'm relieved to finally get back, but I'm also relieved that we get to have a comfort movie to talk about. So let's just jump right in it with Lars and the Real Girl. So for anyone that has never seen Lars and the Real Girl, I'm going to give you the synopsis. You can go on IMDb, but I'm like a fun IMDb, as I like to say. It follows Lars. We have to have a Lars in there somewhere. He's in the title of the movie. And Lars is a man that likes his own bubble. He does live with his brother and sister-in-law in a little adjacent little home garage, and he goes to work and he goes to church and he just comes home. There's nothing else that he does. He just keeps to himself. He interacts enough, but it can be seen that he's very uncomfortable with some of these situations and doesn't know what to do. So one day he goes to his brother and sister-in-law and says, hey, I met someone. I got a girlfriend. Her name is Bianca. And they're over the moon. It's the best news ever to hear that someone you love has found someone. And they're looking forward to having a sit down with Bianca and getting to meet this new lady in Lars's life. Except, it's a sex doll. And they have no idea what to do with that. No one could have ever seen it coming that the quiet guy bought a automatically correct sex doll and has a whole story for her that she left her home and she's looking for a place to live. And they, of course, thought this is a real person living in their house now. And it's just a sex doll that's just sitting there. And the brother thinks, oh God, Lars has lost his mind. We are so doomed. But this is the first time that Lars has ever opened up. And because the townsfolk does like Lars, they give it a shot and act as if Bianca is a real girl. And you see how Lars gradually opens up. But the more he opens up, then there's going to be some other stuff that he's going to have to face sooner or later. So, for lack of words and to not make this sound like a pun, this is one of the realest movies I think I've ever seen. I do like the writing in some films where you can feel it. It's like a conversation you would have with someone in real life, so it derives a little bit from reality. But this is not a bad reality to have to sit through in this fictional movie. Everyone feels like someone you know in real life, or feels like a neighbor you definitely have across the street. They almost feel like Norman Rockwell characters with how integrated this town is. Like, you feel like you're in that town along with Lars. But the realest part about that movie is Lars himself. Lars is one of the best written characters to depict what it's like to have social anxiety and to have issues that you don't know how to talk about, but it's keeping you from doing the things that you should be doing but don't know how to do. Like, you can see the gears grinding in Lars's mind of trying to figure out the nicest way to say no to some of the people that interact with him. The way that he interacts with everybody, you can tell immediately that he is just trying to address the kindness without being unkind to a kindness. Because, like I said, he's a dude that just likes his bubble, and there isn't a way to figure out to tell someone, hey, I like you, but I like my own company, without sounding like an asshole. Like, he's very aware of what it's going to sound like, and being in a small town, like, some of those answers can be very limited when you see these people on like a daily basis, which makes it 10 times harder for Lars to like find a way to nope kindly out of these situations. But then Bianca comes along and then makes the situations better. But then he's also in a small town where word travels fast, and if you see one day that the quiet guy brings a sex doll to church, like, people are definitely gonna talk. But one of the best ways that does make this movie feel very real is the way that the cast treated the doll. So I read in the trivia that when it came to the production, Bianca had her own trailer. So everyone could get used to the story of having to make a doll feel real. And well, what better way than to have a doll in her own trailer? You feel gradually a little bit more integrated into this life where everyone has to act as if this doll is real and take her to all these things involved with the town. And it's like the most genius idea, because you can see how well everyone is interacting with this doll. It helps the story feel more fluid, and you feel more for Lars, that by him saying that she's real, then the others are like, okay, well then she's real to us too. Whenever I tell people about this story, even though it does alarm people having to hear that it's a man that takes on a sex doll as a girlfriend, but it's the town that really makes the real girl feel real. Everyone pitches in. Everyone starts to call her Bianca, and they just act like this is normal because, well, Lars loves Bianca and is real to her, so she's real to them. But I'd have to say, one of my favorite things about this movie is that I like that there are no villains. That took me a hot second to realize that everyone that I've interacted with, they're just not mean, they're not menacing, some of them are a little hoity-toity, but you can deal with a hoity-toity character and put them in their place. No one is out to be mean, because it seems like it'd be so easy to pick on a guy that says a sex doll is his girlfriend. It could have been so easy to make the brother out to be a villain, or make some of his coworkers out to be a villain. Everyone's not allergic to listening or logic in this. Everyone is pleasant in this movie. And even the ones, like I said, that don't exactly get it, and there have been a couple of side characters that have made fun of Lars, but a majority of characters come to Lars's defense because they know him. And they know that he's not a creep. They know that he would never do anything. They know that he's lonely, and if he's going through something, then they just let him go through it. They leave him alone. There's a character in here named Mrs. Grunner, who is my favorite character, who goes to church with Lars. And everyone's quick to be like, oh my God, I don't want that sex doll in my church again. I don't want him anywhere near my kids. And she's like, you all need to take a freaking chill pill. And she calls out everybody for everyone having their own individual quirk or mannerism or their own vices, that they should not pick on Lars when everyone has their own thing that works for them. And, it's church, do not cast judgment. I love how she put them all in their place. But the same thing goes for when Lars transitions into his love life. Very early on in the movie, it's established that there's a girl named Margot that goes to his church and also works with him. She's got a pretty good observation of Lars, and she's, dropping some hints. Some of them subtle, some of them not so subtle, but, we're all not perfect when it comes to the dating game, especially in small towns. So Margot's a character that kind of knows the boundaries. There's been an instance that she had to be told to ease up a little bit, but she still respects the fact that she had to be told to ease up a little bit. So when Bianca comes into the picture, she's put off by it, but she's very quick to go to the defense of Lars and contribute to making Bianca be a part of the town. And even when it's starting to be hinted more that Lars does like Margot more than a friend, she doesn't push him on it. It's a very nice slow burn romance where everyone's at their own pace, and that's very refreshing to see in a movie. His brother Gus in the movie, I felt, made the most strides. In a way, Lars's brother Gus reminded me a little bit of Randy and Ralphie from A Christmas Story, that, yeah, they're typical brothers, but there's going to be some common ground to find a way to, support each other no matter what. And it's very lovely to see in this film how Lars does gradually find a way to talk to Gus and have a concrete relationship with him, and all that probably wouldn't have been possible if he didn't, have a sex doll come into his life, of all things. But I love the way that Gus takes accountability for himself without having to make a big deal out of it. It just kind of comes to him on his own, that he realizes that he may not have been the one that hurt Lars, but he wasn't there for Lars the way that he felt he should have been, and now there's a chance to do that. It's a nice way to see someone not have to be told to take accountability. They can just do it for themselves. Especially when it's your family, that's a very different thing. Very, it's very uncommon at the time, but it's nice that it exists here. But as much as the church lady helps out with making sure that Lars isn't judged, and neither is Bianca, and Margot being a nice little addition to know that there's a hope for Lars, and even Lars's family does come around, the best part of this movie is the doctor. Even though I've already blown up a lot of smoke up this movie's ass, this doctor is one of the best doctors I've ever seen in a movie. And there's been plenty of famous character doctors, but this one has a special place in my heart because she reminds me of the doctors that looked out for my best interest when I had to open up about my mental health. The way Dr. Dagmar is a child psychologist, but she's not going to turn away someone that needs help, but she doesn't force help on Lars. She knows that Lars is in control. This is Lars's delusion, and forcing him out of this is not going to make anything better. She knows that Lars is controlling the narrative of Bianca, and trying to interrupt that narrative is not going to make anything easier to get him to open up about his childhood trauma. The way that she gradually gets him to open up without having to make Lars feel he has to open up. Because most of the time, Lars uses Bianca as like a scapegoat, a way to talk about his problems by mentioning it as Bianca's problems. And eventually it transitioned from him talking about Bianca to talking about himself. And it's such a beautiful transition to see that Lars is comfortable to open up to someone. There's a section in the film where he talks about how he has a hard time being hugged because it's so painful. And she goes, well, Lars, sometimes it's beautiful to be hugged by someone. And he goes, no, it hurts. And she goes, oh. And then it kind of became clear to her that this is what Lars says. This is what's hurting him, that it has to be taken seriously. And it's beautiful when a doctor, will take you seriously for however you have to make the terminology for it. And it just makes me relieved to know that there are some good doctors out there in the world. And I like how Dr. Dagmar feels like an epitome of those doctors that think the best of their patients. And even with her being a small town doctor, there's a level of professionalism that she still gives in this. And it's just, I could go on forever about this character. Like, everyone had a way to take the situation and not make it awful for Lars. That shows how much Lars is cared about, which plays a huge part later on in the film when he has to be told that everyone cares about him, even while he's going through something. So, before I continue to go all over the place in this episode, I want to take the time to go back and talk about Bianca again, since, well, this is, she is the real girl after all. I gotta talk about her. The way that Bianca is shown in this movie, it is something to have to see over and over again, because you miss things every single time. I missed things the first time I watched this movie. So in the beginning, when Bianca is introduced, she has fishnets on and glitter, and she's got a full face of makeup. But then as time goes on, the face changes to be more natural, and then at the very end, sickly. And the way that you never see the faces change, you just kind of have to know that Lars is the one changing the face every time, because he's the one that has to have Bianca and then knows her story, and well, of course, when her story comes to an end. But it's such a nice detail that makes it more than what people would expect out of this movie, that you really felt that Bianca was real. This movie makes you feel so much for an inanimate object that's used for sex. But that's the thing. This is a sex doll purchased by someone that does not use her for the objection of sex, and treats her like a person and personifies her so well that the Townsfolk brings her in, and you see her, sitting with the kids and, being a mannequin display for a store part-time. Yeah, they paid a doll. They went so far. Shit, not even the dummy pilot and fucking Airplane got that much attention. I've never seen a film that personified an item so much that you did feel that item was real. The writing is just exquisite with how they put this premise across to feel comforting. Even if the first introduction is you're kidding me, right? He bought a sex doll and he's going to say it's his girlfriend. And by the end of it, it's you're so nice to Bianca. Damn, I wish that I had someone talk to me the way Ryan Gosling talks to Bianca. But the whole point of the story is not really about Bianca, it's about Lars. And in the progress of this movie, you see Lars use Bianca as a way to get into social situations more comfortably, but then, like I said earlier, other stuff is going to have to come out too, because he's been a quiet guy for a long time. No one really knew why Lars was so quiet. Even his brother is hey, he likes his bubble, he stays in his bubble, and they've had some issues with their parents, but they've never had a talk about it, which definitely built up over the years, making it difficult for Lars to, feel comfortable enough to have to say what has really hurt him all these years. And the main thing that has hurt him is very evident even within the movie before it's realized that his childhood trauma of his mother dying and his father not being the greatest father in the world has led to him having intimacy issues. So having a doll that he can orchestrate the story for, having someone at his own speed that doesn't know about his trauma, that doesn't know what he went through, that doesn't view him in a certain way that they want expectations out of him. It was someone that did not have anything like that for him. He could just enjoy intimacy on his own time until the day comes that he can get that for himself. The childhood trauma in this film, it's depicted in a way that doesn't feel like it's trying to be groundbreaking, but it does it in a softer way than I've ever seen with multiple films that really up the ante and like go for all these psychological elements and whatnot. And that's evident here and not evident here. Like a lot of this is the dude just needed to have the time to talk about it at his own pace. And that pace just happened to be a sex doll he bought online that helped him acclimate to it. But you do feel a lot in this movie, you know, like for a film called Lars and the Real Girl, like you, I mean, you feel Bianca as real and you feel the pain of Lars. Everyone deals with childhood trauma to a certain degree, and it's never pretty when that day has to come that you have to talk about why things fell apart to such a degree that it makes it hard to function in everyday life. Earlier in the movie, when his sister-in-law Karen is trying her darndest to get him to join in for family breakfast or lunch or dinner, and then she finally like had enough and she like tackles him to the ground and it says, Lars, you promised, and there's this look of pain on his face that isn't quite known yet why his look is of pain, but like I mentioned earlier, hugs are painful to him. So Lars is going through something that physical touch makes him absolutely horrified, and that makes him feel pain to such a degree that he feels like he's on fire. And he can't tell Karen that because she's nice, because clearly a hug is meant to be such a loving gesture, but you know, how can you tell someone a loving gesture actually hurts them? And Lars takes the ultimate hit on himself by not telling anybody. The poor guy hurts himself only to be able to still help others. No matter what Lars has gone through, he still continues to be kind. Even though his childhood trauma taps him on the shoulder every damn day. But adding more on to the mental health about this movie, I love the social cues. There's a part in the beginning of the movie where Lars is going to work and he has a coworker that can be a little overstimulating, but they have a copacetic working environment. I also like how the coworker seems to be comfortable with having to be himself, but doesn't try to push it onto Lars. Early on, he was about to show him what would eventually be, you know, where Bianca comes from on a website, and Lars had to ask, like, is it porn? And the guy goes, no, it's not porn. He's like, yeah, it's like porn. He doesn't lie to Lars. And even when the coworker does start to play very loud music, Lars is like, headset, and immediately puts on his headset. But the biggest social cue of them all is the character I mentioned earlier, Margot, when she's accidentally encroaching a little bit on the boundaries, and the coworker says, hey, Lars, isn't it your turn for coffee? And Lars, you know, immediately, you know, takes the party trick, and he gets up to go get coffee and tells Margot, hey, Margot, like, chill out, okay? It speaks a lot of volumes for this very limited contact you have. It is one of my favorite scenes where no one is allergic to listening. So this next part, I don't really have a proper segue for it, but I don't think I'd forgive myself if I did not mention one of the coolest ties this movie has is to Shutter Island, the Martin Scorsese movie about Leonardo DiCaprio going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So, Patricia Clarkson, who plays the doctor in this movie, and Emily Mortimer, who plays Karen, the sister-in-law, were both in Shutter Island, ironically playing the same character. If you've seen Shutter Island, then you know what I'm talking about. But seeing Shutter Island and then seeing this movie, oh man, it was a funny ass experience. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just like, how come you guys aren't on an island trying to trick Leonardo DiCaprio? But it's kind of a funny little time capsule knowing that these two would eventually go on to a really cool piece of film noir. So I feel like this is the best time to talk about the man of the hour, the man that made this movie possible, Ryan Gosling. And I truly say that. I know this was written by some amazing writers, and Craig Gillespie did a great job directing this, but this is Ryan Gosling's movie. This movie really made me appreciate Ryan Gosling. There's been tons of others, but this was the movie that also made me pay attention to his work a little bit more, and I've gotten the chance to see him in Blade Runner 2049. I got to see him in a really dark-ass movie called All Good Things. Like, I've never not known a bad performance from this man, from playing bounty hunters, killers, Ken. And I love the fact that this man has such a range that no one even dares to try and pin The Notebook on him, because he's definitely done a lot more since The Notebook. But with this being in a time period when he was like building himself up and getting some more range, like this really is the peak of his range between fucking Kay from Blade Runner, Ken from Barbie. I just realized they both have to do with dolls, and here we are. This man is in too many doll movies. What is going on here? Anyway, it's beside the point. This is like the most realist, genuine characters I've ever seen him play. But I feel like he put the most of himself into this movie from what I read. He was the one that requested some of the soundtrack have songs that he likes that brings out the best in him. And the party scene when he's dancing very like comfortably and uncomfortably at the same time, and it's two talking heads, and like you can tell the dude is like, oh, this is my jam. And another time in the movie where Lars is sitting down with Margot and her boyfriend broke up with her, and now he's comfortable enough to reach out to Margot and establish some kind of a rapport with her, and also to make her feel better because someone, the coworker, tied a noose around her teddy bear. And the way that Ryan Gosling did that scene, oh, like no notes, but I'm gonna tell you about it anyway. He takes the bear and he gives it CPR, and it was all in the moment, all improv, and fucking Kelly Gardner is struggling there, trying not to laugh. Her reaction is as genuine as his improv. So even though I love how this movie has aged, that there's more of a sense and sensitivity and sensibility and catering to someone else's speed and social cues, but there is one thing that's for sure. This film is definitely playing from reality, that now people do get, like, certain body parts for their own comfort. I don't know if many people have heard about this, but, like, you can buy a big male torso with just the arms and just wrap it around you if someone just needs, like, to be wrapped around without it being, like, a real person, but still feigns that sense of intimacy. And I ain't gonna lie, when I heard about it, I was like, how much? Really? I mean, like, you know, you do what you gotta do, whatever, like, fits, you know, your comfort, as long as it's not violating any laws or morals, you know, you do you, boo. Just like the church lady said in this movie, like, we all have our something that helps us get through life. Sometimes it's going to be a sex doll named Bianca, sometimes it's just a torso to wrap around. You never know what's going to work for you. So for my final little musings about this film, I like how this film makes you believe in people again. This is a movie about love, and it does eventually get around there, but you kind of have to believe in yourself before you can believe in anything. And I like how you see Lars believe in himself after all the trauma that he went through. He did find himself. It's never an easy segue for anybody. No one really knows what their segue in life looks like to help them out. And not all things work for others, but you never know how people are willing to work with you on your path. We all go through certain things in our mental health, and the biggest thing is having a support group. There is a whole town that was willing to drive a sex doll to work in a mannequin shop, and then drive her to go read to the kids, and then drive her to church stuff, and became so integrated they just start calling her by her name. To be believed by others, it's a very beautiful feeling. And we don't get too many moments like that in movies, and I'm glad that it exists in here. Like, no one's perfect, but you don't have to be perfect to be kind. This is not really a perfect film to say, but I like that it doesn't have to be a perfect movie. These are not perfect characters, and they're not meant to be perfect characters. We all deal with everything for a certain degree, and it's nice to watch a film that doesn't feel like it's trying to take away from reality, but it does give you a little bit back into your own reality. Like I said, this is like a film I like to watch that makes me want to believe in people again, and it's nice that there's some few films out there that you can say that it does do something for your life. I mean, movies are fun. You have to enjoy them for what they are. And I enjoy this film for, reinstating some belief in life. And I feel like that's a good note to end on. This was a good positive episode. And Lord, I think we need some positivity to keep us going in 2025. Like, life is rough all around. But when you have good people in your life, it doesn't make life so rough. Even if sometimes a sex doll might have to help you out once in a while. Who knows? So, usually this is the time where I tell you that there is going to be a new episode on the Screen Queen. Well, I have another plot twist for you. Well, not really. I already talked about this in my last episode, that I'm premiering a new side segment called Recaps. This has been an idea that I've been floating around for a little bit, and it's another way to keep things going on the show that makes it a little bit more tied to some current things, and it's going to be a bit of an unplugged show. This episode premieres on February 14th, and that's all you're going to know. So before I go, I do have a very important announcement that is for one of my friends. I have a wonderful friend named Meg, and they are the biggest advocate for autism awareness. And all that has to be done to help this cause is to buy movie tickets. It's called A Brighter Side to ASD Inc. It is a parent organization that has been working to highlight the progress, accomplishments, and success of the autism community of Hampton Roads, Virginia, by providing platforms which allows their talents to shine and be recognized. The mission is to continue highlighting the brighter side to living with autism by providing support, resources, programs, and creating platforms for these exceptional individuals to discover and explore their strengths and expose their talents to show they are valued members of society with so much to offer while providing families with hope for the future. And right now, so the link in the description box is going to direct you there, and all you gotta do is pay for a ticket for a movie, and it helps out the autism community. I mean, shoot, like, that's the funnest way to support someone, man. Like, that's right up my alley. And if anyone would be so kind to donate to the cause, it'd be amazing. But if you can't, then please pass on the link to someone else that can. But also keep in mind that this is only going to be open until, February 15th. I was right. Sometimes I have talent to remember things. Yay. But until then, I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as I loved talking about it. And if you want to catch up with me in between uploads, you can find me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen, and I'll be having some cool shit landing on there sometime soon, so keep an eye out for that. And I always say that there's an easier way to listen to me, because I am available on YouTube. where you can find all the episodes of your Media Queen. And as always, I like to end every episode to talk about my book series, and I am currently doing a lot of work on that now and getting that up and ready for 2025. So look out for some new stuff there that I'll be updating it in the future. But until then, stay amazing and don't forget to take care of yourselves. I'll be back next month with a new episode. This is your Screen Queen, signing off. Bye-bye!